Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the City Manager Evaluation Committee for Friday, February 17th. It is actually a little after 3 p.m. And Vicki, do we need to take attendance or?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right. First item on our agenda is public comment. Eric, is there anyone wishing to make public comment?
We have no one in the waiting room as of right now, Vice Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from August 10th of 2022. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lance.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Morris. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We'll move on to the city manager report of performance highlights and concerns. Rebecca, take it away.
Thank you. I am going to go into those committee updates. I was going to say Commissioner Reynolds just told me she's having connection issues, but I see her right there, just so you know, Vice Mayor. Do you want to touch on the commission highlights and concerns, or you want me to go right into the update?
Why don't we go right into the commission updates or the committee updates? Okay,
then I will do that. So it's good to see all of you. I know this group hasn't met in a little bit, and so there's a lot of information to share, but I'm certainly not going to read every report and every comment that came in. I think overall, what I hope you see is that one, we are making progress. So the first report I want to talk about is the fiscal year 22 work plan. Remember, this is the first period of time that we've used the 2-year report. So last year was the first year we would address the updates on each one of those items, but then it was not an evaluation year. This year, then we will continue to update the items on the 2-year work plan, and it is a full evaluation year for the commission. I think this was thought to give any potential new commissioners time to get to know the organization and how that all works. So I'll speak first on the fiscal year 22 work plan. Remember that each of the tabs in that report relate to our priority-based budgeting community results. So, I hope that's what all of the commissioners see and our community sees, is that everything ties back to those in which you helped set and that we revisited last year. So, as I talk about the economy, lots happening. And sometimes what's hard is, remember, this reporting period goes until the end of calendar year 22. So we don't really have first quarter yet, although several of our departments have things that are, kind of popping right now in this first part of the first quarter of 23. But most projects, actually all projects, will have some update through the fourth quarter, with a few in the first quarter of 2023. You can see that our small business team is incredibly busy. A lot of it seems to be behind the scenes because they're doing a lot of things with tracking, data gathering, data mining, and trying to stay out there doing the retention visits with small businesses. I think, as you'll see, and I'm sure you've heard, I think the small businesses downtown, particularly the food businesses, they struggle because we don't have the number of people in our downtown that we used to have. That's why it's so important that we continue to see and love to see the renovation of the McCamley Hotel and what that's going to look like, as well as successes with the Milton being full and a waiting list. Those people are, for a better word, captured downtown that will utilize more services in the downtown. But what we know is that the businesses that are downtown do not have, kind of their full staff back in-house in their facilities in downtown Battle Creek, and that may not happen. So I know all of our teams, John Hart and his team, and Ted, Joe and his team, the chamber and others, we're all working to figure out, okay, what can we do to supplement that? If those office workers aren't going to come back, what can we do? And I can't necessarily say I have an answer for you, but I think the opening of New Holland is a good thing. The success of HandMap as well as Cafe Rica is a good thing. And we will continue to keep in close contacts with those businesses as they experience what they're experiencing right now and anything that we can do to assist. So I would say from a business perspective, we are continuing to focus on small business, but also trying to do as much things remotely as we can. We still are now allowing those online permits. We're doing some reviews and inspections via online and virtual, which has been really helpful. We've gotten good feedback about that. And then the struggle we're hearing is labor is expensive, supplies and materials are expensive, and it's hard to fill all of their open positions. So we'll continue to work on that. From a safety perspective, certainly that's been highlighted with the retirement of Chief Blocker. But what he started and has been working so hard on doesn't stop with Interim Chief Bagley. So we do appreciate that, particularly, the smart cameras are live in most of the areas downtown, and we're looking to add smart cameras in Claude Evans Park as part of a larger park project with the extension of fiber there. So continuing to use tools, technology most recently, to help improve the safety and security in our community, which is always a priority when we do any community surveys, when we do feedback on our results or customer service surveys. That's what we're hearing. We want to continue that feeling of safety and being responsive. I know that Chief Blocker shared a lot, as well as Chief Bagley. It's hard that they both have B's. But anyway, they certainly have shared the struggle in maintaining full staffing because it's great that we just swore in 17 new officers, but that doesn't mean we have 17 people in slots to take calls for service. It will take them, a good 6 to 9 months to be ready to take calls on their own. They certainly are working with their field training officers to be ready and prepared, but that's going to take us a little bit. And as we're now starting to work on the fiscal year 24 budget, we know we also have a slate of retirements scheduled for next fiscal year. So always trying to fill those holes. So I think that's for safety. Transportation, mobility, certainly Mallory and her team have just completed the triennial review with the federal government, the Federal Transit Administration. So that's always a little bit stressful. It's kind of like our annual audit, except they do it triennially. So it seems more intense for them, but they've just completed that review, and we'll be anxious to hear the response from the federal government. But also we continue on the successes of BC Go. We've been able to put another BC Go van on the roads, thanks to the donation of the Kellogg Company. And then continuing discussions about countywide transportation and what that might look like in Calhoun County. I think with Ford's recent announcement, it will elevate that particular discussion because we know 2,500 workers are going to need to get to that new development, and what can we do to support that? From the utilities perspective, I think water and safe water is always important. We've been keeping the commission apprised as to the Verona well field and the fact that our casings are old and will need replacing strategically with the help of Eagle and our consultants. So we're working towards that. And then stormwater utility is always an issue for us, but until something changes at the legislative level, we would not be pursuing that. Doesn't mean that we don't address stormwater and drainage. It's one of the things that's prompted the project at Claude Evans Park. If you didn't know, there is a very large stormwater pipe underneath the park. And I remember being told that, hey, we found a barbecue grill in there and a refrigerator and some other things. So it needs to be addressed. And we've heard that neighbors would like to see more parking there. So if you're going to address or add additional parking, stormwater and drainage comes right along with that. And so we'll be able to address that all at one time. And then I'll talk about ARPA in just a little bit, so I won't address that there. I don't think I highlighted anything in environmental, physical appearance, or design, but that doesn't mean that we're not doing great things about that. I want to talk about things that are recent, but we'll wait for the next quarter to do that. Arts and cultural perspective, we are seeing an uptick in a number of events, different events. We tried for the first time a sky deck party on one of our parking ramps. Very well attended, want to do more. We tried a park at Willard Beach, a concert on the beach where boats could come up and listen to the music. Very successful, and they want more. So, trying to continue to cultivate a culture of vitality. We know that will help make communities of choice. We've had a lot of conversations since the Ford announcement in that there are a lot of communities that those employees can choose to live, recreate, play, spend their money, et cetera. So we want to do all we can to highlight Battle Creek as a place that you should want to live, work, play, educate, and worship, all of those things. So we will continue to address that, utilizing the arts and culture and other activities as far as small business development. So watch for new things. Cue the Creek, if you didn't get a chance, incredibly successful, thousands of people. The lines to get food were incredibly long. So I think that, again, that's been a successful event. Certainly the Chamber's Backyards Burgers and Brew Fest. And then we're going to have an inaugural Mac and Cheese Fest. If we know anything, food brings people. So the more events we can tie to food, we're finding we get larger numbers when we do things of that nature. So see more of that coming. And we appreciate partnering with entities like Penetrator Events, Black Sheep, the City Small Business Center, the Chamber, and et cetera. All of us are working towards the same goal of that placemaking goal of making Battle Creek a destination, a choice for people when they have so many choices. Why not Battle Creek? Recreation. You will, on your agenda next week, you're going to see some improvements to Bailey Park thanks to some ARPA funds, but we continue to see a demand for Bailey Park. We know that the BC Fire Soccer Club is going to be utilizing the elementary school at Riverside for their soccer club. If that's another area where people will come, if their kids are in sports or some sort of event, the gymnastics event, right, that's going on right now is huge. And all of those things will bring people to our community and in Calhoun County, and we want to continue to grow that. From a governance perspective, in that 2-year work plan, a lot of this is around resident engagement. And I want to point out, Chris Lucier and his team in community development do tremendous amount of work, but in all of our departments right now, he has probably had the biggest level of turnover. And his group deals with a lot of things, particularly with our HUD funds, but is also working to help us rethink neighborhood planning councils and our citizen engagement practices and processes. And so we've had a bit of a delay on that. Don't think it's not important, but he's dealing with new staff on a constant basis right now. So we are working to help him try to stabilize some of those positions, but this is just a tough talent market right now. And so we will continue, I think we will continue to struggle in those areas. And it isn't just line workers, it's specialists, technical, expertise, department heads, everybody's vying for talent out there. And so we are experiencing similar at the city. That's my highlight of the 2-year work plan. Are there any questions about that? And if not, I can move into the ARPA. Not hearing or seeing anyway. Please just go ahead and speak because I might not see all of your squares. From an ARPA perspective, what you received as this update is all of the city ARPA projects and what stage they're in. I love it when they say project is complete. That's fun, but we know not all of our projects can be completed in that short of time. So, for example, the City Hall facade work, the retaining wall, and then the first floor renovation, those are going to take time. And I don't have to tell any of you, it took us a long time to finish the facade, just to 1, identify funds, 2, get the very specific supplies and materials, and 3, get on the agenda of somebody that has the expertise to work on a building that's 100+ years old. So if you haven't, the facade does look great. There's a few things that they need to touch up. But once they do that and they start the first floor renovation, then we'll also be addressing the retaining wall. That's an eyesore. I get it. When you're at Division, Main, that area right there, and you see that crumbling, it's an eyesore, but we will have that addressed sooner rather than later. I think the other one I'm often asked on as far as a city project is the utility billing one. That has been a challenge because you want to be fair. Because we know we have people that are like, well, if they're not going to shut me off, I'm not going to pay the water bill. That certainly isn't the sentiment of most, but it has been of some. So how do we provide these support dollars in an equitable manner? And so we are utilizing the CDBG block eligible census tracts as an area to focus on, and then a certain period of time, which is allowed within the ARPA dollars. So once you've identified that, then you have to get the data out of our Logos system. There is where we're having the challenge. We're actually having to have a program written for that. And it's just taking longer. Again, everything right now is taking longer and it's more expensive. So, we are working through that. No, the credits have not been applied to those eligible census tracts yet, but I do anticipate that by June the 30th. And then we'll have to talk about what does the utility billing account look like? What does the delinquency look like, and et cetera. So that's taken a lot longer, excuse me, than Linda and her team would like, but yet we want to make sure that we do it right. Certainly we are addressing the parking ramp issues, but there is one where I can tell you we went out to bid and it's almost 3.5 times what was estimated. So then you have to go back and value engineer, which several of these are dealing with. But again, I love to say that several of them also indicate that the project is complete. Remember, we have to encumber the ARPA dollars by 12/31/24. They have to be spent by 12/31/26. So we're constantly watching that. And I do expect that we will have to come back to the commission and tweak some. For example, the communal kitchens, we have had an external attorney take a look at that and has recommended that we do something a little bit different than the forgivable loans, but that will mean we need to go back to the commission and say, hey, this is what's being proposed, commission. Does that make sense to you? Or do you want us to consider a different direction? So we know that any projects that don't come to fruition or change, the scope more than, what we feel comfortable with, that will all come back to the commission. So I hope what you're seeing is we have a lot of city ARPA projects, but most all of them are moving. If they're not moving, I believe I can firmly say it's something out of our control, whether it's staffing levels, whether things are coming in higher from an estimate perspective, or it has to be bid and procured in a very specific manner because of the source of the funds. So any questions about the ARPA updates from the team? Okay, not seeing any. So let me make sure I get into the last one. So the agenda tracker, I already gave you a sneak peek because I attached it to the weekly update last week. But that I hope is just, it's a checker for all of you to say, hey, this is probably coming. One, if you have any questions, ask us at any time. But two, you'll kind of see what we're thinking from a staff as far as what may hit when it was going to come before you, whether it's a resolution or ordinance, or whether or not we need to have a workshop. We're going to try to always update this, and I'll provide this at least quarterly so that you know where we're at. I mean, we have some big things coming, and we don't want to advance without getting in front of the commission as early as possible. I think one of the biggest is the Citizen Review Board, and we are anticipating that probably the first meeting in April. But again, as soon as we have some solidified items and dates, I will put them in there and try to highlight those as many ways as possible, because I know it can be challenging and you have a lot of information coming at you. Vice Mayor, I think that was my third, unless anybody would like to talk about anything on the agenda tracker. Actually, one of the things, and I know Commissioner Lance sent me an email today too, that I will get that response out today, but one of the things on there is the marijuana ordinance. And really that came out of planning commission discussions and city commission discussions, especially when we were talking about special use permits, and, some really good comments about, well, really, should it be next to a child care facility or an adult foster care home? Can we cap the number of facilities of marijuana businesses in the city? All of those things aren't in our current ordinance. And so what staff thought might be helpful is if we shared kind of what we're thinking as potential amendments, and then commission, then you can tell us that makes sense, then we should, it doesn't make sense, or we should just simply leave the marijuana ordinance as it's written. But I think there's been enough discussion, particularly around where they're located, and maybe is the 1,000-foot buffer an appropriate length? Is that the right distance? All those things that are coming, and then staff is getting those questions from potential businesses and current businesses. We would just like to get some direction from commission about, do we leave it, or do we need to really address a couple of things? So that, that's one of the things that's coming up relatively quickly. And then I had already mentioned the Citizen Review Board. That could have, again, you're going to get some recommendations from several different entities. The Human Relations Board, I think the NAACP, as well as kind of thoughts from Interim Chief Bagley and myself. And then we will look for direction to the commission. I understand that there are those out there in the community that would just like us to create it right now and move on. This is just not one of those things. This is one of those things where we need to understand, what are you, commission, thinking? What makes sense based on what you're hearing? And then what we can share as a staff. Certainly, Chief Bagley and I have talked about the importance of transparency, accountability. I don't think that's in question. It just is the devil's in the details, and we'll have to talk through with the commission what those look like.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, that's fast, but those are the three. Those are the three reports that are included as part of this committee update, and that will be also shared with the entire commission in the weekly update this weekend.
So I think we would move on to committee discussion and incorporate the commission highlights and concerns as part of that committee discussion. I think one of the items that, not necessarily for this meeting, but I think our next meeting will be starting to make those plans for Rebecca's review this fall. Assuming that we keep with the same timelines for surveys and things like that, we're going to need to get that process moving. So that being said, committee discussion. I mean, anybody have anything that they'd like to bring up, add? Good, bad, indifferent? I know Commissioner Lance needs to
I'm sorry,
have
Sherry.
another. I'm sorry.
So what?
Commissioner Reynolds?
Oh, can you hear? I think I'm frozen.
No, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm sorry. I kind of confused. What were you asking?
So we need to move on to the committee discussion portion of the meeting, and I think so that this is on everyone's radar, we need to start planning probably at our next meeting for Rebecca's review to happen late summer, early fall, so that it's kind of on your radar. We don't have to do it at this meeting because we hadn't said
That's fine.
anything about it, but
Yes,
but yeah.
I agree.
So
Okay.
anything else that you'd like to bring up? Concerns, comments?
No, not at this time. No, but we
Okay.
do need to, get that on our calendar and our radar so that we can be ahead of the game.
Yes. I
Thank
know
you.
Commissioner Lance, you need to leave in about 2 or 3 minutes. You've got another meeting to go to. Did you have anything you wanted to add before you left our group?
No, I think I'm all set.
Okay. Commissioner Morris?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute there. No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. So I think our next meeting will be, assuming that we keep with the kind of every other month time frame, our next meeting would be in April. And I'll try and I'll talk to you guys maybe at a commission meeting or something like that, and we'll figure out what works for calendars, or maybe Becca can do a doodle poll, depending on Rebecca's availability, and we'll figure out another date and time for our next meeting. Is there any other business to come before the committee? And seeing none, we will adjourn And Commissioner Lance will be on time for his meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your
Bye.
time.